Welcome to the Seep Recycling panel of the 2021 GREEN4SEA Forum. In this panel, we would like to discuss about the Seep Recycling, the IHM, and the ongoing developments to the market. From January 2021, Seep's calling the EU ports must carry an IHM certificate on board. Overall, the new legal requirements on Seep Recycling have become a pressing issue for all ships, not a number of ships, but all ships, no matter if they are brand new or old. What is more, according to a recent development, the Seep Recycling capacity of India is expected to be doubled by 2024. So I would like to discuss what are the key challenges with regards to Seep Recycling, the EU Seep Recycling regulation versus the global Hong Kong Convention and the IHM, and of course the status of the shipbreaking yards and future prospects. In order to do that, we have gathered a panel of experts. Let me briefly introduce them to you. We have Dr. Konstantinos Galanis, who is the chairman, among other things, of the International Ship Recycling Association. We have Henning Graham. Henning is the CEO of Green Ship Recycling Services based in Hamburg. And last but not least, we have Kalogianni, who is a claims executive with the Standard Club, and she's a co-author of a very good bulletin, recent bulletin within the past 6 months of Standard Club. I would like to welcome you all, and I would like to start right away with a set of presentations, asking Kostas to share his screen and start with his presentation.
Apostle, Henning, and Anna, would like to thank you all and be happy for being together with you for the sake of discussing about ship recycling. So the main point of my presentation is about the sustainability and ship recycling. As you all know, we have heard so many terms about ship breaking, ship demolition, ship scrapping, dismantling, green ship recycling. So there's a great confusion to my understanding when we're referring to how a ship should be properly being recycled. So my idea and the associations, the International Ship Recycling Association, is we need to have a holistic approach, including all parts and the entities being involved in ship recycling, to have a sustainable maritime industry. Just a brief clarification for those that are not that experts or do not have some understanding. There is a terminology being actually introduced by the Japanese back in 2006 regarding what is landing of a ship in order for the vessel to be recycled or a vessel to be dismantled and recycled in an afloat condition, about beaching that is happening usually at the subcontinent, and the dry docking. So you can see here and have a schematic and some photographs for some clarification. The case, as you all know, or for those that don't know, a ship is not always that a clean asset when we would like to do partial dismantling or even full dismantling. So we need to understand that on board our ships, especially the older ladies, we have several hazardous materials that together with their existence and handling of this material, we need to be very careful when the vessel will actually reach a ship recycling facility, and we have to make sure that the safety of the workers and the environment is actually being provided by the all entities. On the right-hand side of the slide, though, what you can see that although we have several regulatory frameworks in the agenda when we recycle a ship, there is some confusion and some misleading numbers about where the ships are actually have to be recycled or where they're actually being recycled, and when we are actually need to have a proper framework about this particular activity in the ship, in the life of a ship. To gather all these regulations in a simple matrix, what we can say that for the ship owners or the managers and the operators of a ship, when the vessel is flying an EU flag, no matter if the vessel is departing by an EU port or by a non-EU port, the vessel, she has to be recycled in an EU listed ship recycling facility. On the other hand, when we're discussing about a non-EU flagship, we have two different layers, whether the vessel is departing by an EU port where the EU waste shipment regulation applies, or departing by a non-EU port where the Basel Convention should be enforced. And this is actually the guideline that someone should follow. Regarding the EU ship recycling regulation 1257 of 2013, that is actually the only one enforced right now, the major key players definitely are the ship owner, the ship recycling facility, the classification society that usually is issuing the ready for recycling certificate on behalf of the flag state. But we should focus on the proper preparation, existing maintenance of a good developed IHM, which is the inventory of hazardous materials, actually capturing and mapping all the hazardous materials on board the ship. That is being provided to the yard, the appointed yard, to create the ship recycling plant that will then be relayed to the classification society for the issuance of the ready for recycling certificate that is actually valid for 3 months. Collecting all this information, we should always ensure that the two critical elements and directions for a proper ship recycling is the safety of the workers and the environmental protection. You can read by yourself a selected list of some critical processes that we should focus when we are recycling a ship. We have a lot of issues still worldwide regarding the working at height and enclosed spaces, processes, procedures, and implementation, where most of the accidents are actually happening at the ship recycling facilities, whereas the pre-cleaning process and the waste removal are also very high-risk procedures and actions that have to be taken. Lack of proper PPEs in several yards, even yards that have been approved by several competent authorities, and the offering of a working environment for the workers, the labor force, to be able to provide a proper service. On the other hand, the environmental protection is something that is usually documented but not implemented properly. There is a whole region of aspects, including sea, soil, air, and noise, and even more, where a ship recycling facility should expand and try to find how to deal and minimize all the impact of the ship recycling of a ship and how this is actually affecting the environment. So briefly, to finalize my initial presentation, the key challenges that as an industry we are facing is the adaptability of a culture, because we should not always stick to the legal part, what we have to do, where we have to comply. We have to go even further than this, and we have to learn about the standards, how to assess this particular sector. We should always be able to assess, evaluate, and find ways to optimize the safety of the workers and the protection of the environment, especially for the ship owners when they're selecting a yard. The vessel condition on arrival at the ship recycling facility is very important, especially, and this lies to the ship owners. And I'm sure we will listen also about development of IHM. This IHM is not just a document, it has to be a live process on board the ship and its maintenance, decontamination of a ship, especially some structures that might have potentially radioactive materials and mercury. And finally, we should be familiar with the recycle economics, because sometimes we are confused as an industry and we are mixing the regulations with the prices. So we understand that we have a very high volatility of commodities, and commodities like the iron ore, as you can see on the right hand side, some projections being offered by the World Bank even for 2020, affecting the price of the scrap steel. We have the imposition of tariffs and taxation, and finally the currency exchange rates that can alter the offered price of the ship recycling facility to ship owners. Apostole, that is an initial introduction from my end.
Thank you, Konstantinos. Thank you very much. Let's move to Henning. Henning, let's hear from you.
Yes, thank you very much. So, Kostas, thank you very much. It was a very good presentation, and I'm also very happy to participate in this forum. So the question is, how can we plan and how can we select the proper recycling facility as a ship owner? So what is the legal background, but also what are the practical implementations or implications? So first of all, it's always a matter of time when anything becomes waste. No matter how nice and shiny anything is today, one day will come and it becomes a waste. Anything more or less what is surrounding us, and of course maritime assets in particular. So the legal background is quite, let's say, challenging for those who are not working with that every day. We have the Basel Convention, and since December 2019 we have the Basel Ban Amendment, which, as Kostas already said, restricts the trading of end-of-life ships from OECD countries to non-OECD countries. We have the EU ship recycling regulation, which requires recycling of ships in EU-listed facilities only in case of EU-flagged ships. And we also have the Hong Kong Convention, which unfortunately has not entered into force yet, because that would create a level playing field all around the globe. These are the key, let's say, conventions and regulations, but we also have national legislations, technical guidelines, we have transitional measures from International Chamber of Shipping, for instance, and others, and many, many more. And what was also highlighted is that if there is no proper IHM, so not a proper initial development or developed IHM or a properly maintained IHM, no safe and sound recycling is possible. It's a prerequisite for the ship recycling facility to know where the hazardous materials are, how they look like on board an individual ship. And it is a very individual approach. There is no standard approach applicable for IHMs. So the legal overview, basically, the Hong Kong Convention, and I think that's general consensus, is offering a sufficient and equivalent level of control of Basel Convention. This is shared by major flag states as well. So that's one of the key aspects on whether or not Basel Convention will remain applicable to end-of-life ships after entry into force of the Hong Kong Conventions. Also, the procedures as described in the Hong Kong Convention are considered to be suitable, as like in the EU ship recycling regulation. The thing or the question is the interpretation and the enforcement. And I fully agree that there are quite a few certificates out there for HKC compliance, which should have never been issued. So a certification is not a good indicator on whether or not a recycling yard is doing a proper job. We have a territorial applicability of Basel Convention and Basel Ban Amendment, and that's one of the key factors for compliance. So Basel compliance can be achieved. Basel Ban Amendment is limiting the selection or the variety of the different yards which can be chosen by owners tremendously. And as said before, EU flagged vessels have to be recycled in EU listed facilities. So it depends on the ship, it depends on where the ship is, what flag is it flying, to properly plan the recycling of that ship to be compliant. And in any case, no matter if it's an EU-listed yard or not, supervision from our point of view, based on our experience, is strongly recommended for any ship in any yard, because there are so many different factors, and there should always be an independent third-party auditor or supervisor making sure that there is a proper control from the last ship owner about the ship recycling facility, and that always proper advice can be provided to the yard. There are many other factors when we talk about sustainable recycling, green recycling, however you want to call it, or scrapping. So what is happening in the hinterland? What is happening with the steel? And the biggest quantity, of course, is steel coming from the ships. So is it re-rolled? Is it directly reused? Is it resmelted? Whatever. So if we want to see the overall environmental impact, we have to take such things into consideration as well. Also, the percentage of what goes into a landfill or what is considered to be waste and what is reuse. Of course, what we need to avoid is an uncontrolled distribution of hazardous materials coming from the ships going further into the hinterland. This has to be strictly controlled. We are dealing with an image problem, or let's say with different images in the ship recycling sector. There are certain countries which are considered to be green. This is one of the, let's say, green destinations, as it's commonly understood. This is, for instance, Turkey. Any naval architect knows what this picture means for the stress of the ship's hull. So, and the aft is still afloat. So these are risks which should not be underestimated, and every method has to be evaluated independently, and all its own characteristics need to be considered properly. A very recent photo I found yesterday: cruise vessels go to Turkey because of the image, and of course quality can be good. It depends on the individual yard. These photos, from my point of view, don't look really convincing. It always depends on what you want to show with the photos. As like this one from India. So the neighbors, these are not yards we have worked with. The one in the middle, this is one of the yards we have worked with a couple of years back, and they keep improving, improving, improving. What we need is a yard-specific and fair and individual judgment. So, does the legislation guarantee quality recycling? From my point of view, no, it does not, because there is no similar approval scheme for EU-located yards and yards located in third countries. The external auditors, which have been hired by the European Commission, have a clear no-beaching attitude. This is well published since many, many years. So maybe it was done on purpose. I am not sure about that. So the Basel Convention ban amendment stopped the EU audits in India. And what I understand is that the guys in Brussels try to work on a legal workaround to make use of acceptable recycling capacity in India. At the moment, there is no fair comparison or campaigning from my point of view. It's always focusing on the method or on the destination, which should not happen. Each and every yard should be treated and judged individually, because the method applied has a marginal influence on health, safety, and environmental standards. What happens is, or what counts, is what happens inside the ship. Individual planning is a key until entry into force of convention. From my point of view, Hong Kong Convention is the only global instrument which can be established, which can establish a level playing field. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henning. Thank you for the detailed outline of where we stand, and especially highlighting the shortfalls of the legislation and where we stand as an industry. Let's hear from Anna. Anna.
Hello, Apostolos. Thank you very much. Hello from me as well, and likewise, it's a pleasure to be a panelist along with Henning and Kostas today. I would like to raise and discuss two issues with you. So the risks, one will be the risks that ship owners may face due to non-compliance with the applicable ship recycling regulation, by also referring to some actual cases as examples, and also ship recycling from a club cover perspective. Yes, so I will start with the risks that ship owners may face due to non-compliance. Well, the absence of one international and uniformly applicable convention for the recycling of ships can definitely make this a difficult field for operators to navigate. The cumulative effect of the different approaches to recycling enshrined in international conventions or regional regulations limits green ship recycling locations and heightens the risk of reputational damage if ship owners get it wrong. There have been several high-profile cases where operators, ship owners, or directors of companies have suffered reputational or financial damage because of how they've recycled their ships. The examples I will touch upon involve situations of evasion of the provisions of the EU waste shipping regulation by not declaring at the time of departure from an EU port the ship's true destination, or even the fact that the ship is to be scrapped at destination. And such an example is the Ada carrier, which involves the sale and attempt of scrapping a ship in Pakistan, which had as a result the imprisonment of the ship owner and the levy of heavy fines to the company and the ship owner. There may even be situations where owners might have traded the ship outside the EU before scrapping or reflagged the ship before the sale. In such cases, the sea trade, which is probably the first and most known case regarding breach of the applicable ship recycling regime, and one really highlighting the critical element of the last voyage of ships from EU ports and the decision-making process prior to recycling, that is, prior to the last voyage, which may be viewed by the relevant authorities to assess the ship owner's true intention for the application of the EU regulations. The sea trade, which I mentioned, is the case where the courts in the Netherlands suspended from work the company executives who were found to be guilty and also imposed heavy fines. And alas, there are also some other situations which we have seen more recently, where claims are being brought by injured workers or by the families of deceased workers against ship managers who are responsible for the presence of ships in scrapping yards that allegedly do not meet safety requirements. And it's probably worth focusing on these last type of cases a bit more, because it seems that English courts may be prepared to accept that victims and their relatives can pursue a negligence claim against a UK company, being the original owner, but that had influence on where the ship would eventually be scrapped, on the pretext that their involvement may be viewed as a positive act and a breach of a possibly owed duty of care to ensure that the ship was safely demolished, rather than a pure omission. As you understand, this could put significant pressure on ship owners to ensure that their ships are safely demolished in the future, while it may have significant ramifications even beyond the shipping industry. Now, as far as club cover is concerned, in accordance with the club's rules, the members have an obligation to disclose to their club any material changes involving the ship's operation, an example of which is ship recycling. And what the club will then do is seek to determine the point up to which cover should continue and at what terms. For example, the club may amend premium, amend the terms of entry, or even terminate the ship's entry. And in this case, the club will seek to obtain the following information from the member: details of the final voyage, arrangements regarding the ship's flag, the location of recycling, and at what point in the process title of the ship will transfer to the buyer, as well as a confirmation that all relevant regulations, the conventions, the local licenses or the permissions for scrapping have been obtained and complied with. It's worth mentioning that it's often that ships are sold to cash buyers to arrange for the ship's recycling voyage. And in these cases, members should expect that their clause will probably ask them to confirm that, to the best of their knowledge, of course, the new buyer will recycle the ship in compliance with the applicable regimes and conventions and has obtained the relevant permissions. And that's from me. Thank you very much.
Very much, Anna. Thank all of you for these practical presentations that you highlighted a number of issues. I would like to have a round of questions, let's say, as a discussion. I would like to start with Anna. Anna, I would like to ask you, I'm going to start some practical questions before we move, let's say, a little bit. Anna, have you heard of any ships losing their cover? Because that was the second slide you presented. The first was about risks. And if I can recall correctly, the names, the Ada carrier and the sea trade, these cases were presented in your bulletin you have with the ship recycling, if I'm not correct?
Indeed.
Correct. So, and you have details over there, and I found it extremely helpful because we have to put some names. Not only, hearing, there are risks, etc. So have you heard of any ships losing their cover? Not necessarily to your club, losing the cover because they haven't followed properly these, let's say, last leg requirements up to the scrapping.
My response to the question will be no, I'm not aware of any ships losing their cover. And I would probably have to say that also for P&I clubs, this is a new topic. This is a fresh topic that we are all trying to get more familiar with. So no, I'm not aware of any cases where cover has been lost, but at the same time, we all need to become more aware of the implications that non-compliance with the applicable regulations may have.
Absolutely, but more or less the same applies for all sorts of requirements. And at the end of the day, what you have over there is more or less generic. I'm not saying it applies, yes, but it's more or less generic. So it applies to a number of things, and I'm just asking because we have to be practical. Now, moving on to the IHM, we had a number of ships that had to comply with the IHM. I would like to start with Henning on this. Henning, you are the people the responsible working with this IHM. You have a lot of work. What's your feedback with the IHM? Are you happy with what happened? Do you feel that the market is properly, let's say, has properly addressed the issue? Can you share your thoughts with us on this?
Yeah, what we see is there is a huge variety on the approach on how IHMs are developed. One of the financial issues, and shipping is a financial sensitive business, is the number of samples taken. And we see huge variety from, let's say, 15, 20 samples for a big ship up to 200 samples taken, sometimes even more. And the tricky bit was to have a good compromise between pricing and quality. And what we see is that any quality has been certified by most reputable classification societies. And that's a big problem for the owners because they're not experts in this field. They look for the certificate because that's one of the key requirements. And nowadays we see the same happening with regards to IHM maintenance. There are very low quality approaches, if we can talk about quality at all. And there are top quality approaches and simply guys who overdo things tremendously and create even more problems than they solve. So it's a huge variety out there, and common sense should be applied and some level of understanding should be achieved. Then the IHM can be properly used for sound recycling and sound planning of recycling.
Kostas, do you have any let's say, experience to share with regards to the IHM implementation, the sampling and the certification
Sure.
maintenance?
Apostole, just to clarify, also beyond being, the chairman of the National Ship Recycling Association, I'm also a director in Untitled Shipping, where we do have, ship recycling facilities. So we do have this expertise. If Anna, would like me to comment, yes, also I can confirm from my end that there are not covers being actually waived by the members. Nevertheless, recent exams like GARD, which is, one of the P&I clubs that prevails in the industry, taking into consideration the growth and the size, for one of the ships that we have dealt also in our facility is taking some actions further to include the ship recycling activities actually in advance and not, during the process as you asked. Of course, for IHM, as Henning said, it's amazing to see all this mess. So IHMs right now, it's fully messed up. The positive aspect is, finally the maritime industry gets a familiarization about why we need to do something for ship recycling. So it's not, a ship is dying, so we don't care. We throw our waste, so we don't care. A ship should be actually tackled, as we said, with a holistic approach. Our intention as International Ship Recycling Association is also to include the ship recycling plan when the vessel is designed. So IHM still is very early to assess whether it is, to the standards or not.
Yeah. So we've seen that the industry, to put it in that sense, has been extremely resourceful, to put it in that sense, in order to find ways to bend the rule, as we all understand, because it is price sensitive at the end. Anna, any member of yours, do you have any experience to share with us with any sort of problems from your point of view, from your perspective, with regards to IHM certification and maintenance, maybe?
What I can say is that we have definitely received many inquiries by members that were, in order to get more information as to how to get the IHM prepared, but this is, it's the general message is that it not only has to be prepared, but it also has to be maintained properly, because it is a live process. So yeah, just a word of caution on that.
Okay, may I ask Henning and Kostas for your views on why beyond we understand the price, the cost sensitivity of the market. We all understand that. Other than that, we've seen, as you said, top-tier classification societies, in the game of trying to minimize the number of samples. I'm not going to say any names. I'm just saying anyone being in the business trying to be more competitive than the other. So why do you think that happened? With respect to, established players in the market, fully respected. Why, in your view, this happened? Is it just, the price sensitivity, looking for more business? Because it requires two to a tango. It's not one. So your views, Henning.
Yeah, I think the problem is it's all business driven, not quality driven. And that's the key challenge or the key problem I see in general with classification societies. So if one classification society is a little bit too complicated or too quality oriented, the ship owner can choose freely another certifier for the IHM. So it's not bound to the ship's class. They can choose any class. So, and that's the problem. And basically that's one of the reasons why I stopped working for classes. So it was not quality oriented, and it was not focusing on making sure that all legal requirements are met. It was a business approach, and that's not the role of class, and that's of course opening up another box of Pandora, but that's the general problem. And I hope that one day we will see EMSA audits for the classification societies, and that some severe consequences will happen when they detect substandard IHMs and related certificates issued by these classes.
I'm not sure. You've been working with classification societies. I've been in the industry for 30 years, approximately. I can assure you that nothing like that will happen in the near future. At least this is my understanding, because I'm just saying this. Kostas, by the way,
Yes.
from your end,
Sure.
Why do you think this happened? I mean,
first of all, I fully agree with Henning. It's business oriented. So everybody's asking, give me a certificate. I just need a certificate by a class society member stating that, I'm Hong Kong compliant or EU compliant. So it's a matter of culture. On the one hand, definitely, if we were, ship owners that we didn't have that culture of, proceeding in the future with the proper steps, we just need to pay the minimum fee, let's say. On the other hand, it will be interesting to see whether, an improved and upgraded and up to the standards, a wonderful IHM will actually have a positive impact in the environmental footprint of a ship. So if all the international associations were asking the ship owners that, a good IHM will actually positively impact your environmental footprint, and you get a bonus, you get a premium from the charterers, from wherever, then immediately you see the next day ship owners asking for a proper IHM because they have a benefit. Right now, with the pandemic having the third wave in the market, with all these pessimistic markets and the price of commodities, asking for an additional proper environmental documentation for the ship recycling is also a bad timing, of course, because we live in a real world, so you don't need to have everything proper today. We should always adjust and adapt, our industries based on the prevailing conditions.
Yeah, I understand that, but I asked this question because I've been in the business too many years. I mean, this happened only with the ship recycling, with the IHM specifically. You haven't seen these top-tier players behaving the same way with other requirements. Meaning, when I said it takes two to tango, meaning that Kostas, exactly as you said, they owners feel and managers feel there's no significance out of just getting a certificate. It's exactly what you said. Other than that, yes, they will go to the lowest bidder, to put it in that sense, and that creates an unfair competition between the market players.
At least, Apostle, sorry for jumping in, we always have to be positive. I'm positive by nature, that at least now ship recycling is coming to the surface. So, on one hand, we are crying and we are complaining with Henning and Anna. On the other hand, we have to actually say that ship recycling is becoming in the agenda, and this is a huge step for our society because, as you understand, waste handling is always the very difficult, area for all the products, not only ships, vehicles, our, home waste, etc.
You always said that Hong Kong Convention will create a level playing field. I would like to ask you, starting with Anna, when do you see this convention entering into force? Just try to take your crystal ball, let's say, or give me some preconditions, let's say, to put it into that sense. Anna, when do you think that this Hong Kong Convention will enter into force?
I'm afraid I cannot reply with any certainty to this question. What I would definitely like to mention, though, is that, shipping is an international business. And for this reason, it must have common regulations that apply globally to all ships of all flags, wherever these are trading. And I think the only way to ensure a level playing field where safety and environmental protection do not play any part in a commercial competition is exactly this, through an international regime for ship recycling, in the same way that SOLAS exists for safety and MARPOL exists for environmental protection. I'm aware that there are 16 states that have now ratified the Hong Kong Convention, so the first requirement has been met, but I'm not sure I can respond as to how far close we are with regard to the second and third requirements.
Yes. Henning, any clues? Yes?
Yes, 2025.
I think so.
What we need at the moment, we have the first condition, which is met, number of states. The second condition is like 7% or so short, which is not a major challenge, I would say. The biggest challenge is the third condition, which is unusual for IMO conventions to have the recycling capacity. But Bangladesh has passed a law by which Bangladesh is required to ratify Hong Kong Convention in February 2023. And I know that in China, the discussions have re-emerged again on ratifying the Hong Kong Convention or not. So which means we can meet the third condition when, for instance, Bangladesh will ratify the convention, and hopefully China will join as well. So, and then 2 years later, it will enter into force. This is my hope. And then another 5 years later, we will have another IHM boom like what we had last year. Another 20,000 ships to be covered with a hopefully proper IHM. So that's my estimate at the moment.
Kostas, anything to add on this?
Yes, my personal view, not from Israel, is this convention didn't work, and didn't work because the prerequisites were, as both our colleagues, weren't, applicable at some stage. After so many years discussing, what will be the crystal ball of finding something to apply, it makes ourselves, because we create conventions, we human beings, organizations, so we are shooting our legs. The international entities and all the, legal provision members should act today. So we should not wait for 2025, 2030. We should do something today or yesterday, because here we're discussing about waste treatment, about safety of the workers, of the environment. So something should be done today. It's like Apostle dealing with, excuse me for changing the agenda, about the COVID-19 and the seafarer, that everybody was saying, yes, it is, very difficult to deal. And that was another failure of the maritime industry. We should gather today and find a way to solve it today. We should not wait the statistics or the numbers or, recycling states. And Bangladesh, with all the respect, we're waiting Bangladesh to put in force, an international recycling regulation, which is, excuse me, ridiculous for the level that the maritime industry is currently standing. And I think we should do something all together, not as members.
Yeah, but I mean, we've seen that the industry has been extremely resilient, to use a term which is, let's say, hot in these days, in finding ways to, extending the reach of the regulations. We've seen that with the Ballast Water Management Convention, it took more than 15 years. And we've seen that happening with other things as well. Now, as we will be out of time, I would like to ask you, what in your views, what do you think are the key challenges for the next 5 years, let's say, to put in that sense, with respect to ship recycling? Annie.
Thank you. I would start by saying, as I mentioned earlier, the absence of one international and uniformly applicable ship recycling regime is definitely a challenge. Again, I will refer to what I said during my presentation, the possibly owed duty of care by the ship's original owner. And I think there's a lot to be seen there, because there is one case that has now been referred to the UK High Court to decide exactly on this point. I would also add the shortage of ship recycling capacities for EU ship owners. The European list currently has 43 shipyards, but none of those in South Asia. So this is a challenge for ships flying EU flags. The maintenance of the inventory of hazardous material, of course, is a challenge. And last, I would probably say the high costs for ship recycling in a wreck removal scenario, which may not fall under P&I cover, as it may be deemed to be more of an operational decision for ship owners. So one last point from a club cover perspective.
It's a nice point, and I think it's something, what the last one you said about the wreck removal is one of the hottest potatoes in this, because we've seen, especially with container ship fires, we've seen things like that happen. And no one knows how to handle the issue appropriately. It's a lot of gray area over there. Yeah, thank you for pointing this out. Henning, your thoughts on the challenges within the next 5 years?
To establish a proper understanding for all involved, for all the stakeholders, to really develop a, let's say, convenient and legally safe route for recycling, and to have a fair, let's say, judgment on the individual yards. That's one of the key challenges. So if ship recycling, also like IHMs, if we would be able to save 0.1% of fuel, everybody would knock on our doors. We are in general talking about end-of-life ships, maritime assets. We talk about bad news. The IHM is only listing hazardous substances. Nobody is keen on that. But what the industry will need to learn is the IHM is a technical file overtaking a lot of responsibilities by those who have developed it, who have maintained it, including the suppliers. And this is a lesson learned, which we will all see coming up in the future. And if we can establish in the industry a proper understanding from cradle to grave and all the responsibilities, this would be great to be achieved in the next coming years. Like new builds are strictly controlled during the construction phase, and if the same happens to the end-of-life phase of ships, that would be wonderful.
Yes, my comments is actually from a legal perspective. Until we solve this, complex equation. I'm a naval engineer. I have PhDs from MIT, but it looks like some equations are much more complex than people would like to see. So for me, there's always solution to problems. I think the easiest way is to educate people. So there are a lot of ship owners, ship managers, shipping entities that they don't have a clue about what is these regulations. So at least until we have this international ship recycling association by the Hong Kong Convention being enforced, at least let's educate them. Regarding the ship, and IHM Henning has done, numerous IHMs. He knows that, we need to collect the data. We have seen a lot of vessels containing asbestos, although asbestos wasn't there a couple of years ago for the ship owners. So what we will do with this? So this is under the radar right now. A lot of ships with asbestos are still, sailing outside, and, we just look to a different direction. So we need to do something again for this. And for the third part, which is the ship recycling facilities, I highly encourage the ship owners to actually go one step further or even more when they are assessing which entity will buy the ship, what are the credentials about, incidents, accidents, and there are companies to actually have some as consultants. Although lately we have seen for the IHM a lot of, mushrooms companies being in the industry dealing with IHM, which if you bring them today here, they will not be able to answer a lot of questions, at least from me and Henning. Sorry, Anna, because we are working on this field absolutely directly.
Yeah. I understand exactly what you're saying, and there's a lot of parachuters, especially if something is in demand in the industry, and we've seen that happening. This is one of the, as I said, the industry has an extremely resourceful. All the players in the industry have been extremely resourceful, and I'm not sure what we can do about it. Anyway, I would like to thank you all very much. Thank you for joining us in this panel. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and we'll be in touch in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna and Henning.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.